Up ahead we find another visual cliche, the Archimedes spiral. This is found throughout history and is a spiral that spins indefinitely outwards or inwards. The staircase is designed as a vertical implementation of that idea. The relief on top that we saw in the old church in the woods in the catacombs is a horizontal version of that design. The Archimedes spiral, named after the Greek mathematician, goes back to the Egyptians, who used this design to create screw pumps that raised water out of the Nile to irrigate their farmland. And that raising of liquids from the depths to use to fuel life is what is happening in Dark Souls as well. The blood of the Astora Knights being pumped up to fuel the flame. This is what we saw in the Undead Parish, with the Black Knight wielding the greatsword, while rats ruled the area below the sewer grate. And here we have the second gargoyle, trapped behind the drawbridge, a symbol of the brother who could not leave Anor Londo. Returning to the horizontal relief, in Anor Londo the design is quite large. We can see it is representing a liquid blood, with a piece of humanity held inside. And this is an important reminder of the metaphysics of Dark Souls that we talked about with Rhea in the Undead Church. There are three components: humanity, the grounding force to this plane, soul, the life force, and a vessel to put the two in. And this loops us back around to Gwynevere. We'll find out Gwynevere is an illusion. This is something that is well known to fans of the series. This is found out by striking her down with a projectile. And in my reading, if you do, you will strike down the very real and very living Gwynevere. There is a race of creatures we haven't talked about yet, and they are the illusions. And there are a few of them in Dark Souls. They are creatures that are created purely from souls, and so they are tentative. And for me, are just as living as anything else in Dark Souls. And of course we are talking about a game which is always figurative, but by the rules of the Dark Souls universe, I believe Gwynevere is alive and here in Anor Londo. The illusions are very similar to the constructs that have a programming that cannot be deviated from, but lack a vessel or humanity, and so need to acquire more souls to keep themselves alive, just as we can absorb souls on our journey. And that is why the illusions are connected to covenants, as they feed off the souls provided to them by the faithful. Notice we are entering a small doorway. This is the intended entrance to the hall. The hieroglyphs of Gwynevere are missing below, instead replaced by the square floral design of the Way of White. This hall was created during the First Age of Fire and was meant to house Siev's daughter Priscilla and her child Velka. I want to bring forward the item description for the Ring of the Sun Princess, as we won't be meeting Gwynevere for several installments, but when we do we can join Gwynevere's covenant. And if we choose to serve the princess, we will be awarded this ring. Ring of the Sun Princess. This ring is granted to those who enter a covenant with Gwynevere, daughter of Lord Gwyn and the Princess of Sunlight. This slightly warm ring boosts the synergy of miracles. The Princess of Sunlight left Anor Londo long ago with many other deities, and later became wife to flame god Flann. When we receive this ring, questions arise from it. Who are the other deities? Where did they escape to? Who is Flame God Flann? Why is he not just a god, but capitalized Flame God? Who did he rule over? Why don't we hear about him anywhere else in Dark Souls? This item description is very complicated, and I hope I can explain it clearly. It is a truth and a lie. This ring can be explained simply. This is the tale of Gwynevere, and unless Dark Souls lore has changed drastically since I saw it last, this is the lore of Gwynevere. Burgermeister, please let me know if I am wrong about this. Now I can explain this ring with my own theories. Gwynevere, an illusion, fled Anor Londo with her entourage to one of the many kingdoms of Lordran, where she found her love, Flann. She escaped Anor Londo. She was a naive child that wasn't taken by the dark, and so cannot be found in the catacombs. And then Gwyndolin replaced his sister with another illusion to sit in Anor Londo to help the pilgrims on their journey. But this extra detail is complicated. It adds little to the story I'm telling, doesn't explain anything I found in Lordran, it just answers its own questions. But if I claim this ring is a lie, it simplifies things and this ring becomes poetic to me. And you may disagree with me, you may see Gwynevere in the catacombs or you may see Gwynevere elsewhere in Lordran, and that is the philosophical point of this ring. It is intended as a disagreement on the history of Lordran baked into the game, a disagreement that is meant to divide and continue the cycle of humanity. And I mean everything I say next sincerely. The history of Dark Souls is already written by the fans and the thought leaders of the Dark Souls lore community. What I say on this tour is not the history of Lordran. The accepted history of Lordran is in the wikis, in the videos, in the Reddit threads. Knight Kirk is not a Dark Wraith, even if it is written in the game. This is the lore of Dark Souls. Gwynevere was a true princess, and she escaped the horrors created by her father. This is the happy ending we wanted for her, myself included. And so, it is the history of Lordran. This is the truth of this ring. And you won't find that history on this tour. You will find a different history, and that is what it means to be blasphemous and heretical. But I'm not a martyr, I'm just a nameless tour guide pointing out aspects of this game. This ring is about challenging orthodoxy. It is about finding the lie and breaking the cycle. Something very personal and very complex, and we will discuss that at the end of this episode. And this aspect is intentional, and it is found stated clearly in Dark Souls 2 with the divine blessing of that game. Water blessed by an ancient goddess, her name is long forgotten, and the Magic Academy of Melfia denies even her existence. In any age there are those who refuse to see reason, and it is their meddling that distorts the truth. But what is the truth of Lordran? A cold, logical person like Big Hat Logan would say the truth of Gwynevere is she is a lie, a hilarious prank. But that ignores an important part of what it means to be human. The fact that most people love and need the story of a princess in distress, and her eventual happy ending with her beloved prince. Notice her marriage comes after her escape. And someone like Big Hat Logan will analyze this behavior, learn its lessons, and use it to get whatever he wants. I misspoke when we were in the Darkroot Garden last. I said Velka never lies. She's just loose with the truth. But in my reading, Velka does lie, just once with this ring. But who am I to say that this is a lie, or the only lie? Why not any other item descriptions I am using as the basis for this story? What else is Velka keeping from us? What is the truth of Lordran at that point? And that is also the philosophical point of this ring. A single lie starts to make us doubt the nature of the reality of Lordran. This is the danger of heretical thought, and why many in our own world were burnt in a bonfire for their beliefs. And now to talk about the Painting Guardians and their sword. The Painting Guardian's sword. Curved sword of Anor Londo painting guards, unique shape with flat tip. The Guardians, who strike down those who dare threaten the paintings, attack in a continuous circular motion, a technique passed down through generations. The Painting Guardian is part of the curved sword family that starts with the falchion and scimitar in the catacombs. These guardians, when staggered on the beams above, will put away one sword and pull out a target shield, connecting them to the wily thieves of the basement. They drink from the Estus flask, connecting them to the undead soldiers of the undead burg. Humanity can also be absorbed from them at high rates, just like skeletons in the catacombs. The Painting Guardians are part of a long tradition in Lordran. They start with the undead servants of Velka and Priscilla handling the dead in the catacombs for Nito, blasphemous creations of the living dead who served the first flame. They end up in Anor Londo as they were created by Velka to serve Priscilla. In Anor Londo, in the Age of Astora, they become the Lord's Blades, and Velka creates a new branch in Astora, the Dark Wraiths. After the fall of Ulasil, the undead guards fled with their mistress to this hall, where they now protect the paintings who inhabit the world of Ariamis. Now let's have a close look at the visual design of the Guardians. Notice they look like nurses. No flesh is bare. They have thick hessian gloves as though they are handling poisonous material. Notice the silver and white, one of the colours of Priscilla. The plaid hair like the furry tail of Priscilla. The scaled leggings of a dragon showing the allegiance to Siev's family. And the shoes that I only just learned the significance of in Dark Souls 2, but the content with these shoes was cut. There is a series I just found called Dissecting Dark Souls by Illusory Wall, and these are the shoes of Nassandra. But you can only see her shoes by hacking the game or restoring the Black Gulch to its first gameplay prototype, where there are standing statues of Nassandra clearly wearing these shoes. Now the silver band that will be familiar to those that have played Dark Souls 3, the band worn by the Firekeeper in the game who cannot see until she is given eyes. Notice it has a central one-eye design with small eyes leading back, silver encasing black. Priscilla constraining the dark as the Dark Moon Goddess, and these are her servants. The one large eye design is similar to the design of the orbs that allow us to travel between worlds and serve the Dark Moon Goddess. And now the Black Iron armor set. Armor set of Black Iron Tarkus, a knight known for his great strength. Built of a special black iron, and provides strong defense, notably against fire, and so terribly heavy to be unwieldy to all but Tarkus himself. Tarkus is a symbol of menace, of what happens to him at the end of his time with Velka and the Witch of Izalith. Menace is a heretic. From the first war with the dragons to his defeat in Ulasil, Menace always challenged doctrine and sought better ways. That is why this armor set has high defense from fire. You cannot burn this heretic in a bonfire, he will just return. And this is a terrible burden that he shares with Artorias, as he suffers through the cycle over and over, with no means of escape because he was branded with the dark sign in Astora, or possibly earlier. A gift obtained from Velka, an everlasting dragon. Note the ambiguous image. The middle staff is a silhouette of the iron golem holding up his axe in Sen's fortress. We see an elaborate eternal knot that mimics the path we just took in front of Gwynevere's statue. The axe is trying to break the cycle, but notice the cycle is part of the hilt of the axe and continues regardless. It is a symbol of two people being cut apart while at the same time being stuck together, and it is also the symbol of two people being tied to a stake for execution. And we found the armor set in the corner of this hall, as though Black Iron Tarkus slipped from above and fell into the realm below. He fell into the abyss, just like Jester Menace, as he pursued his princess to the end of the world. The painting guardian, symbol of Priscilla, weeps over his body. An empty water vessel sits unused nearby. Did Priscilla love Menace as she loved Velka, and could not bring herself to punish him with her powers of life hunt? Or was the raging bull more useful to her alive than exiled to the bottom of an ocean? Notice here the floral pattern of the Way of White surrounding the window arches. Above the arches celebrate Gwynevere, the princess we now seek in the keep of Anor Londo. The route we took to this hall was not the sly-back entrance for the devious, it was the designed way to Gwynevere, carved in stone years ago, to celebrate her and the wily thieves that still prowl Lordran at the end of the world. We are not the only ones who seek the glories of Anor Londo at the end of the world. There are three named by the crestfallen merchant in Sen's fortress: Black Iron Tarkus, Night King Randall of Boldor, and Beak-Hat Logan. These three characters are a code. Black Iron Tarkus conquered the fortress and made it to Anor Londo. So did the other two, but all of them slipped and fell. And now the body of the fallen sorcerer tangled in the bronze chandelier holding the great magic weapon. Sorcery which improves upon magic weapon. High magic augmentation, right weapon. At Vinhelm Dragon School, only magic swordsmen on special orders are allowed to learn this spell, which grants powerful augmentation to various weapons. This has several meanings. Notice it can affect various weapons. This is the trail of Seif's assassins, trying to get at Priscilla, the valiant father who now carried Seif the Scaleless on the path he never wished to tread. Notice across from us there are three stained glass windows, three bad apples down here in the abyss. Gwynevere above, flanked by her two brothers. In the centre of the hall, a giant unlit chandelier held up by a fragile and easily broken chain. And overshadowing this hall, with all of its elements, we have the painted world of Ariamis, the home of the scaleless dragons, and the refugees of the horrors of Lordran. And here we have a reiteration of the flower symbol, and this time it is connected to the idea of flames and cycles. An Archimedes spiral that starts with a candle, then a small shoot of life, then a closed green bud of infinite potential, and then a glorious flower with form that sits in the center of the spiral as though it is a permanent final state. A celebration of the life in Lordran and connecting it to the cycle of the flame. But the flame is about life and death. And so, with this simple design, we can see that the nature of the flame has been perverted. There is no representation of death here. Notice the bud can also be seen as a cocoon of a butterfly. As we leave the hall, notice the design on the outside of the spiral staircase, on the opposite side of the stone from the blood relief. It is a chaotic swirl with little form or meaning. This pattern is also found on the ring of the Sunlight Princess, connecting Gwynevere to the harvesting of blood that we first saw in the catacombs. And as we head down, note that we can trade the Sunlight Ring with Snuggly the Crow in the Undead Asylum. If we do, we will get 2 divine blessings. This is because the Sunlight Princess ring is a symbol of 2 gods, Gwynevere and her brother Gwyndolin. And here in the depths of Anor Londo we find the Dark Moon Tomb. That name comes from the warp ability we get later in the game. It holds the Tomb of Gwyn, made after he sacrificed himself to relight the first flame. The tomb itself is empty, but the remains of the Dark Sun Gwyndolin still haunt this place. On the statue we see the armour designed and built by Menace, a gold bull on Gwyn's chest. This is slightly different to the one found in the opening cutscene. Its horns wrap further back, and it's not a disc shape. This is a slightly updated and more dynamic version, just like we saw with the statues in the Undead Church. This is Gwyn preparing to take on the role as the sole ruler of Lordran in the era of Astora. Notice the bull has 4 eyes. Having multiple eyes is a common motif found in the Dark Souls series, and when we finally meet Menace, we will find that he also has multiple eyes. And full disclosure from this Nameless Tour guide, notice you cannot see Gwyn's face. This is a hint towards the idea that the nature of Gwyn is ineffable, which means he cannot be explained with words, but also his name can never be used. This leads to thoughts and theories that are far too blasphemous and heretical for this tour. Aldia Tours is about structure. It is about finding meaning and finding that meaning in all of Lordran. And so these maddening theories were torn from the training manual and burnt in a bonfire. One tour guide attempted to recreate the lost knowledge. He was discovered in the depths of the catacombs, crazed and broken by what he had found. He had cut out his own tongue to contain the horrors, but he did not have to speak for us to know what he had seen. Also, this is a nod towards the inspiration for Gwyn, Odin, the Allfather god of Norse mythology. Odin is called the Allfather because he has more than 100 names. Norse mythology is a very loose collection of verbal histories, created by splintered Germanic tribes, and so Odin takes on many different roles, genders and forms in the verbal tradition. Odin can be confused with Thor and other Norse gods because when the mythologies branched, he was given different powers and responsibilities along the way. This happens in all mythologies, but the Norse is particularly messy because of the religious history of the tribes. And it's why I don't reference it much, as it depends on the Norse mythology you choose. But I do use the Elder Futhak runes a lot because they are structured. Symbols from the Norse tradition are used heavily. Odin, Thor, oxes, boars, crows, wolves, serpents, world trees, witches, prophecies, shapeshifting, fire and ice. Big Hat Logan is a version of Gandalf, who is a version of Merlin, who is a version of Odin. But due to the contentious nature of the mythology, I choose not to look too deeply into their real-world counterparts. Instead, I use the Elder Futhak runes as a lens to focus the ideas. And standing with Gwyn, we find the statues of the Silver Knights that are surrounded by flames and an ambiguous image of their creator, the bull. These Silver Knights burned when the first flame erupted back into life after Gwyn's sacrifice, and they became the transcendent Black Knights that went on to haunt Lordran. Their graves are marked because they transcended the cycle within the flame, but Gwyn's tombstone is blank. As he never left, he became stuck in the kill of the first flame as the Lord of Cinder. Notice the design of the armor set, with the 2 wings that come down the sides of their legs. The Silver Knights look like locusts. They were a plague that ate away at the everlasting dragons. Notice the 2 gravestones next to Gwyn's, the 2 brothers, marked because they both transcended Lordran. And on the side of the elder brother we will find the remains of a servant holding the discarded ring of Sen, given away as he left Anor Londo forever. Ring of the Sun's Firstborn. Lord Gwyn's firstborn, who inherited the sunlight, once wore this ancient ring. Boosts the strength of miracles. Lord Gwyn's firstborn was a god of war, but his foolishness led to a loss of the annals, and a rescinding of his deific status. Today, even his name is not known. Whatever Sen did when he walked away from his father's legacy caused everyone to stop calling him a god. Being a god is not inherent in Lordran. You can be stripped of the title, like a king in our world. Also, whatever he did when the annals were lost. Annals are a written record, a cold analytical account of the sins of Lordran, which has been lost. And now we can use the Dark Moon Seance ring that we found in the catacombs beneath Priscilla's standing statue to remove the illusion of Gwyn. A seance means to commune with the dead, and now we've equipped it, we can talk to the remains of Gwyndolin.
Halt! This is the tomb of the great Lord Gwyn. Tarnished it shall not be by the feet of men. If thou art a true disciple of the Dark Sun, cast aside thine ire. Hear the voice of mine self, Gwyndolin, and kneel before me.
Notice the rug before us. It's not laid out neatly. It has been thrown here in a hurry and goes unattended. This was not meant to be where the rug was originally found. It should have been found somewhere else in Anor Londo, but it was placed here after both the brothers were usurped. And just a reminder of the seance ring that we are using right now. The Dark Sun Gwyndolin is the only remaining deity in Anor Londo. His followers are few, but their tasks are of vital importance. Gwyndolin is the only god that remains in Anor Londo. As Gwynevere is not a god, she is an extension of the Dark Sun. Notice the intertwined colours of the rugs. Purple and gold, the colours of Gwyndolin, a scaleless dragon and son of Gwyn. And gold and red, the colours of Sen, the son of the Witch of Isleth and Gwyn, mixed as they ruled Anor Londo together. Notice the crown at the top of the rug. This is a symbol of the ruler of Lordran, and when we purchase Gwyndolin's armor set, it will have this crown. This is because he wore it when he ruled Lordran as a king of New Londo. This is also found on the shield of Solaire of Astora. Solaire is a symbol of the two brothers of Anor Londo in one body because of how close the two brothers are to each other. We found Solaire standing atop the watchtower, a reminder that life isn't always about the ruins of Ulasil. It can be joyous, fun, and good. That is what the two brothers represent, the joys of youth and naivety.
O disciple of the Dark Sun, thou hast journeyed far. Hear my voice. If thou shalt swear by the covenant to become a shadow of Father Gwyn and Sister Gwynevere, a blade that shall hunt the foes of our lords, then I shalt protect thee, safeguarding thy person with the power of the Dark Moon.
We are now a member of the Dark Moon Blades, the covenant that once consisted of Kayran and Artorius, and now in the name of Gwyn and Gwynevere we hunt the chosen undead that have gone mad and sinned.
Very well. Now thou art a blade of the Dark Moon, hunteth the enemies of the lords by the power of the Dark Sun.
To sin is to interrupt the pilgrimage of others by invading, like we saw in the depths, or to slay an innocent bystander, like when we murdered Petrus to save Rhea. Our role in this world is to follow the pilgrimage and succeed Gwyn alone. Everything else is sin. And we just received the Blue Eye Orb. Invade world of player in Book of the Guilty. Subdue player to acquire Souvenir of Reprisal. These mystical orbs are granted to the Blades of the Dark Moon, knights who serve the Dark Sun Gwyndolin, so they may serve the gods in meting out vengeance. This is the cycle of humanity perpetuated by Gwynevere, the cycle of vengeance. It seems to be noble at first to right the wrongs of Lordran and save those too weak to defend themselves and teach a lesson to those that sin to break the cycle. But what happened on this tour in the Depths episode shows the problem with that thinking. The invader dropped the Book of the Guilty at the feet of a Nameless Tour guide and then butchered a helpless prey. So the invader can in turn be invaded by a Dark Moon Blade that seeks justice. More blood is spilt, red or blue, and no one is righted. And the Nameless Tour guide, who knows full well the lessons of Velka's story, reports the sinner, because it interrupted his flow. The joys of sin and vengeance consumes the tourist, keeping them grounded to this existence of Lordran. And now the Dark Moon Blade Covenant Ring. It is the same design as the Ring of the Sun Princess, but it is in silver. Ring granted to those bound by the Dark Moon Blade Covenant. Answered Dark Sun Gwyndolin summoning. Gwyndolin, all too aware of his repulsive, frail appearance, created the illusion of a sister, Gwynevere, who helps him guard over Anor Londo. An unmasking of these deities would be tantamount to blasphemy. Gwynevere was never born of Gwyn. She was created by Gwyndolin so that he could hide his nature as a scaleless dragon, a hideous crossbreed. I know a lot of people consider Gwyndolin to be a transgender figure, due to the fact he was raised as a daughter, which is described in his armor set. But to me, Gwyndolin is a female illusionist, encouraged by a mother fearful for her child's safety. Gwyndolin is an elaborate drag queen, using moon sorcery to create his effect. His persona Gwynevere is a shield, to keep him safe from those who could not accept him as a legitimate son of Gwyn, but also to manipulate the people who crossed his path. He needed to rule New Londo to spread his father's vision, and to protect the weak of Lordran who suffered through the era of Astora, created by his mother Priscilla and his sister Velka. He needed the uncontrollable knights of Astora to follow the way of white, and he believed a beautiful princess, a symbol of bounty and fertility, was more acceptable to those knights than a hideous broken undead dragon. And so he created the illusion of a sister, and named her Gwynevere, as the symbol of hope in a dark world, with the mission to make Lordran a better place. And Gwyndolin continues this deception to this day. And if that seems wrong or cruel or unjust, well, that's why they call her Merciless Rona, and that is the horrible nature of Rhea of Tharaland, as this is a betrayal of faith and trust. But for all the feelings of betrayal felt when these type of lies are exposed, they ignore the idea that the lies can be powerful and necessary. And the reasoning behind that is built into the visual and gameplay design of Dark Souls in several places, and we will get to those as we enter the back half of the game. But that is an interpretation. Is Gwyndolin simply too cowardly or devious to face us as himself, and so the pathetic king resorts to horrible lies and tricks? Should we not be given the chance to see him as a frail and repulsive king, and let us judge him by his actions, as he tried to correct the world after his scaleless family perverted and destroyed the plan of his father? All of this comes to the idea of blasphemy and heresy, saints and sinners. People lose faith in the truth, and without faith they fall into the madness of the abyss or become lost in the solitude of the night. A night that can be seen by using this ring and answering Gwyndolin's call and being taken to the world of a heretic. What is the ethical and moral nature of the lies of Gwyndolin or Rhea? That takes us through to the philosophical part of this episode. Next week we'll be heading into the painted world of Ariamis, and finally meeting the Dark Moon Goddess and mother of the Scaleless Dragons herself, Priscilla. Quick and fast philosophy time. We are going to discuss 3 people here, though we could discuss several in this section, but I'm trying to keep this under 10 minutes. Most of them are German, and this will be discussed later in the tour. Dark Souls is the journey of the German nation, from paganism with the 3 lords to the Holy Roman Empire starting with Astora, through the Reformation, the era of Islith and Blighttown, the Enlightenment, the city of Ulyssil, where the philosophies we are discussing today are formalized, and there are nods towards Nazi Germany all along the way. Notice the cherubs above the tomb. Instead of regular cherubs, these are old men with elaborate mustaches. I believe this is a nod towards the main philosopher behind Dark Souls, Friedrich Nietzsche. Notice the cherubs wear dresses and stroke their legs seductively. This is a nod towards the idea Nietzsche was homosexual, bisexual, or asexual. Also a nod towards the nature of Gwynevere that we just discussed. This could also be Miyazaki making fun of Nietzsche, as many people have done throughout history. Nietzsche brings in 2 other philosophers for today, René Descartes, who is the basis for a lot of modern philosophy, and Arthur Schopenhauer, who brings in the metaphysical nature of Dark Souls. Firstly, René Descartes, who started the Enlightenment era when he declared the famous idea, "I think, therefore I am." This era was preceded by the religious turmoil of the Reformation and ends in the late 19th century as Europe headed towards the World Wars. There is a lot of different dates that can be used, but these are the ones I know and use. Descartes did a bunch of work, including creating the XY coordinate system, and the notation that goes with it, that we all learnt in school. For Dark Souls, Descartes saw early automation in France, and this got him thinking about what components make up a human in a world where automation could mimic the human body. From this he came up with the idea of the mind-body dualism. Humans are a combination of their mind and their body. This is ingrained in our culture these days to the point where it feels self-evident, but the idea was very contentious in his day. Descartes was also the first person to start thinking that there was something deeper to how we saw things. The idea that we respond to a red imperfect sphere in front of us as an apple that we can eat if we are hungry, rather than the physical properties of the object, its colour and its shape. These ideas led to the famous evil demon thought experiment that has many versions in popular culture. The thought experiment is this. Imagine there is a demon that can magically trick your mind into believing you are in a world, but you aren't actually. You are lying in a bed in another world. This demon creates everything you see: the land, the sky, the people you meet, the food you eat, the sensations you feel. How do you prove this is not happening to you right now? How do you know that you are not lying in a bed in another world while being tricked by an evil demon? You cannot ask for help, as everyone is part of the demon's lie. You cannot sense the outer world, as the demon will not allow that to happen. By this simple thought experiment, an uncomfortable truth appears. We can never know the world beyond the one we sense, as an evil demon could always be manipulating our mind. Even if it isn't, we cannot know. Our faith in reality is broken. This experiment was a dangerous idea that humanity has never really recovered from. But Descartes tried to find a solution by declaring, "I think, therefore I am." I can reason with the demon's world, and in that reasoning I exist. And if that seems unsatisfactory to you, then you agree with Friedrich Nietzsche. Descartes was just starting to rediscover the philosophies of the Greeks, who also had thought about what it meant to be human and how we perceive the world. And so the evil demon experiment explores the idea that the demon is messing with a reality that is external to us. Though, as the natural sciences and philosophy continued to evolve during the Enlightenment, it came to show the way humans think is more complex than just reactions to basic stimuli. We see the world as a single image with depth, but this is not the case. We have two eyes with two different versions of the world. This is then, without thought, turned into a single image attached with the magical knowledge of depth that appears out of nowhere. Then we also attach ideas to those shapes, static objects to avoid, and objects in motion, which we then, without thought, calibrate our movements to avoid. Then on top of that, we apply another layer of meaning. The movements of a child may be more erratic than the movements of an adult, so we change our behavior again to navigate the world. Through this interaction, we have created the concept of space and time. This all happens in an instant, and in the era of Descartes, that extra knowledge comes from nowhere. It just is. As the world gets more complex, versions of Descartes' demon appear everywhere, and unlike Descartes' demon, they are imperfect, meaning their tricks can be uncovered. How do we know Gwyn ever existed in Lordran? We know because Velka tells us. Velka is a version of Descartes' demon. She tells us a story. She chooses what we know and what we don't. Though she is not infallible, and in my reading she doesn't control the visual world, and so the knowledge she withholds can be deduced and any possible lies uncovered. Descartes' ideas went on to inspire Immanuel Kant, who I would argue is the philosopher that underpins the modern philosophy, because he embraced the ideas of Descartes that put a band-aid over the Cthulhu-shaped hole in reality that Descartes found in the 1600s. And he did that by saying the world cannot exist without human reason. The world exists for us in our reaction to stimuli and past experiences, and without us the universe vanishes. This is a very egotistical view, but it allows the human race to function and reason in a reality where everything can be doubted as a trick. There is no demon, as there is nothing knowable external to ourselves. That is why there are so many ambiguous images in Lordran. Ambiguous images, optical illusions, reveal themselves as you gain more knowledge of the world. I didn't notice most of the optical illusions at first. They are things that appear after the analysis of other elements of Lordran. After Descartes comes Arthur Schopenhauer, who did a ton of different work. Importantly for Dark Souls, he reluctantly did some work with Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, which underpins the colours of Lordran. The 6 colours plus white and black, which we'll be discussing in the Duke's Archives. But mostly he brings his metaphysics of the universe. He rejected the idea that the universe was a reflection of our reason. Instead, he said the universe was one constant thing, that is made up of a blind power that strives for existence and life in our perception. This is called the will. Time and space are an illusion of human perception and our reaction to that unknowable external power. In Dark Souls, this is the soul. Humanity anchors the soul to a perception of Lordran. The will is a constant that is exchanged by creatures coming in and out of existence. That is why we absorb souls of others. The will is transferred between us. Humanity is the idea of karma found in Eastern religions. Karma is a thing that we accrue by simply existing, interacting with our world and our passions. Karma is a summation of our sins and our suffering, which are caused by our love for all the things we see. From our base desires to covet what is not ours, to the things we consider noble, such as raising a family or doing well at a profession. All of this is suffering and sin. Schopenhauer was inspired by Eastern religion, and that is why, if you have experience with Hinduism or Buddhism, you will see a lot of symbols that have a specific meaning to you. Fire, axes, dragons, wheels that decorate the areas associated with Velka. The name Menace is an extremely deep pun, as different cultures will see different meaning in that single name. A Manu is an archetypal man found in Hinduism. It is a single man who survived a great cleansing flood of the world and waits on an island at the top of the world to be told by the gods when it is time to return below and start the cycle of existence again. And from him knowledge reappears. Manus plays a variation of this role in Lordran. The idea of the hollows also comes from Hinduism. In that tradition they are called pretas, which is translated to hungry ghosts. These are dead creatures that are consumed by their karma and so wander the land forever hungry and thirsty, and never able to be sated. While this creature seems like something that should be shunned, instead they are pitied. There are festivals where food is put out for the pretas, even though the food will not help them. It is a reflection of our own humanity still suffering through and fighting against our own sins. And finally we have Friedrich Nietzsche, who followed the traditions of Schopenhauer, a favourite of radicals through the last century, because he came up with the idea that morality was not fixed. There was one morality for a strong-willed class, which he called the masters, and a different morality for the weaker class, which he called the slaves. This led him to another dangerous idea closely linked to the evil demon of Descartes. He realised as science continued to show undeniable aspects of our existence, we would discover human life was meaningless as a scientific fact. This was not what concerned Nietzsche though. What concerned him was what would happen when the underclass, who needed the sense of purpose given to them by a Christian God to deal with the struggles of their social position in the underclass, realised they were not part of something bigger, as their morality was anchored to what he considered a state of self-denial. And when that faith was lost and the uncomfortable contradictions of the Christian church were revealed, ironically by the same scholars that the Christians celebrated, the underclass would fall into what he called the abyss. They would become an uncontrollable menace to society. The masters didn't have to worry about this fate, because their moral code is based on self-defined power or will. For them, good and evil are defined by what perpetuates their power or will and what diminishes it. Nietzsche used harsher and more forceful language for all of that, and that is why a lot of people like to make fun of him. Nietzsche, consumed by his fear of the eventual nihilism that he believed would destroy the Western world, came up with a very strange but very fun solution. In an allegory called Thus Spoke Zoroaster, he came up with an idea of the Overman, or the Übermensch. And if you have trouble following the logic, don't worry, you're not the only one. The Overman is a human that lives a cycle of existence over and over until it transcends beyond the notion of good and evil. In the end, it is a human, but it no longer knows sin or desire. It can no longer accrue karma. The Overman did this in the story by crossing the abyss on a tightrope. A set of these ropes can be found in the catacombs next to the campfire just beyond Pinwheel. And once the Overman traverses this ordeal, it would then rule the world as a living god and basis for a morality that cannot be denied. The Overman would define sin and mete out punishment as a cold-hearted, logical observer of the world. Felka is the Overman of Astora, and it didn't go well because she spent her time chasing menace instead of keeping things balanced. Priscilla is an Overman who was selfishly locked away by Sif in an attempt to keep her from sin, but she broke out of her cage and Sif panicked. Menace was meant to be an Overman, but he slipped and fell just like the rest. And we are an Overman in training. We have a very blunt weapon, but at any time we can decide who is right, Petrus or Rhea, even if we don't know what we are doing or why. And that is one of the many problems with the Overman thought experiment, and that is what is being explored comically and cruelly in Dark Souls. The Enlightenment was an amazing time and a maddening time, as different visions of the world collided. And this is where the idea of multiple eyes in Dark Souls comes from. We see the world with 2 eyes, and at times it can feel maddening. Imagine having 4 or 6 or 100. If we see space and time with just 2, imagine the dimensions of existence knowable with more. And we see the result of that sight with Ulasil, Dark Souls' interpretation of the Enlightenment. By the end of your time in Lordran, you may come to believe it is a cruel place, a sewer of human exploits. But that's the secret joy of Schopenhauer, as he gives us a ladder out of the muck of Lordran. Schopenhauer believed by denying Gwynevere and her beauty, by denying the hunt for Dark Souls lore, we can free ourselves of our sin and transcend to a plane of peaceful nothingness beyond Lordran and finally break the cycle of rebirth. Well, that's the idea anyway. But for now I will side with Nietzsche, who said such thoughts are weakness and lies of masters who want the will for themselves, and demand we embrace our passion for beauty and seek our princess wherever she happens to be. Next week we will continue the exploration of the world of perception by heading into the painted world of Ariamus, to meet Priscilla, who still clings to what remains of her sanity there. Hope to see you all then. Bye.